You drizzle it on your salad. You fry your eggs in it. You pay premium prices for that little green bottle because you believe it's extra virgin, cold-pressed, imported from Italy, and good for your heart. But here's the question almost nobody asks before they buy. What if it isn't? Over the last decade, olive oil has quietly become one of the most counterfeited food products on the planet, right up there with saffron and honey. Investigators in Italy have seized hundreds of thousands of liters of fraudulent oil. Consumer groups in the UK found a shocking share of extra virgin bottles didn't actually meet the legal definition of extra virgin. Lawsuits have been filed and settled against some of the biggest names on your supermarket shelf. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 major olive oil brands that have been named in lawsuits, failed independent lab tests, or gotten caught in labeling controversies. I'll also show you exactly how the fraud happens, why it's so easy to get away with, and maybe most importantly, I'll show you the other side of this story. Because not everything you've heard on the internet about fake olive oil is actually true either. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for on a label, which certifications actually mean something, and how to shop for olive oil like someone who actually knows what they're doing. Let's get into it. Before we name a single brand, you need to understand why olive oil is such an easy target for fraud in the first place, because it explains everything that follows. Real extra virgin olive oil is expensive to make. It has to come from the first mechanical pressing of olives, no heat, no chemical solvents, and it has to pass strict chemical and taste tests. It's also incredibly perishable. Olive oil is essentially fresh fruit juice. From the moment it's pressed, it starts to degrade, and heat, light, oxygen, and time are its natural enemies. Now think about the economics. Genuine, high-quality extra virgin olive oil can cost several times more per liter than a refined seed oil like sunflower or soybean oil. That price gap creates what one European food fraud investigator described as an enormous window where deception can happen. Especially because the olive oil supply chain is so fragmented, oil often gets pressed in one country, shipped in bulk to another, blended, and bottled somewhere else entirely before it ever reaches a store shelf. So how does the fraud actually happen? A few common tactics keep showing up in investigations around the world. First, dilution. Cheaper refined oils, sunflower, soybean, even canola get quietly blended into a bottle labeled 100% olive oil or extra virgin. The average shopper can't tell the difference by looking, and often can't tell by taste either, especially if the oil is used in cooking rather than eaten raw. Second, downgrading and relabeling. Lower-grade virgin oil or even lampante oil, a grade that's technically not fit for direct consumption without further refining, gets deodorized, blended, and sold under a premium extra virgin label. Third, false origin claims. A bottle says imported from Italy or shows the Italian flag, but the olives were actually grown and pressed in Spain, Greece, Tunisia, or Morocco, then simply bottled or in some cases only shipped through Italy. And fourth, just letting it go bad. Sometimes there's no intentional fraud at all. The oil starts out as genuine extra virgin, but poor storage, long transit times, and sitting on a warm shelf for a year and a half quietly degrade it below the legal quality threshold before you even twist the cap off. Recent enforcement numbers show just how serious regulators are taking this. Italian food fraud investigators conducted thousands of inspections in a single recent year and found irregularities in roughly a quarter of the samples they tested, leading to seizures and criminal referrals. Belgian regulators launched a formal investigation after a newspaper's testing found that the majority of the olive oil brands they checked failed to meet quality standards. And European police, through a coordinated operation called Operation Opsin, have seized hundreds of thousands of liters of counterfeit food products, including large volumes of fraudulent olive oil. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a documented, ongoing enforcement problem. Now let's get into the specific brands that have found themselves in the middle of it. You cannot talk about fake olive oil without talking about one report, because almost every viral article, every brands to avoid listicle, and honestly a good chunk of this genre of YouTube video traces back to it. In 2010 and 2011, the Oak Davis Olive Center released a now famous study claiming that a huge share of imported extra virgin olive oil sold in the United States. The study's number was 69% failed to meet the official sensory standard for extra virgin when evaluated by a trained taste panel. California-produced oils fared better, but even 10% of those samples reportedly failed too. That statistic exploded online. It's the root of almost every "your olive oil is fake" headline you've ever seen. But here's the part most viral content leaves out. The industry pushed back hard, and pushed back with a specific, technical argument. The pushback is this: failing a sensory taste panel is not the same thing as being adulterated. Adulteration means an oil has been secretly mixed with something it shouldn't contain, like blending in soybean oil and not disclosing it. A sensory defect just means the oil didn't have the ideal fruity, peppery, defect-free flavor profile a panel expects from top-tier extra virgin, which can easily happen from oxidation, poor storage, or simple aging, with zero fraud involved. Critics of the 2010 report, including the North American Olive Oil Association, an industry trade group, but also independent researchers, point out that the same Davis researchers ran actual chemical and physical purity tests on those same samples and did not find a single instance of adulteration. A separate, independent study by FDA scientists published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2015 tested dozens of extra virgin olive oil samples pulled directly from retail shelves and also found no confirmed adulteration, concluding the overall risk of adulteration in the U.S. market was low. So which is it? Is the olive oil aisle full of fakes? Or is this mostly overblown? Honestly, the truthful answer is, it's more complicated than either extreme. And I'll come back to that later in the video with the most recent 2024-2025 data. But first, let's get to what you came here for: the 6 brands. Bertolli is one of the most recognizable olive oil brands in American grocery stores, the kind of name that basically is olive oil to a lot of shoppers, thanks to decades of advertising built around Italian heritage. Here's the issue. Bertolli was named in consumer lawsuits alleging that its packaging and marketing misled shoppers about the true origin of the oil inside the bottle. The core accusation wasn't that the oil was fake or unsafe, it was that labeling and imagery evoked a small batch Italian product, when in reality much of the oil sourced for these blends came from a mix of countries, including large-scale producers outside Italy. Bertolli settled litigation of this kind rather than fight it out in court, which is a matter of public record, not speculation. To be clear about what this does and doesn't mean, settling a labeling lawsuit is not the same as an admission that the oil itself is adulterated or unsafe. But it is a real, documented example of a major brand being taken to court over how honestly it represented its product's origin, and that's exactly the kind of thing worth knowing before you pay a premium for Italian olive oil. The lesson here isn't "never buy Bertolli." The lesson is, heritage branding and flag imagery on a label are marketing, not proof of origin. If a brand doesn't put an actual, verifiable country of origin statement or a certification mark on the bottle, that Tuscan countryside on the label is doing a lot more work than the olives are. Filippo Barrio is often mentioned in the same breath as Bertolli, and for a similar reason. It's another major Italian heritage brand with a long history and a strong presence in supermarkets across the US and UK. Like Bertolli, Filippo Barrio faced consumer lawsuits centered on origin claims, specifically allegations that imported from Italy branding created the impression that the olives were Italian-grown, when the reality of large-scale international olive oil sourcing is far messier than that. These cases were also resolved through settlement. Separately, independent taste panel testing over the years, the same style of sensory evaluation used in the Davis study we just talked about, has flagged bottles from established Italian heritage brands, including this one, for not consistently meeting the strict extra virgin sensory bar in every sample tested. Again, context matters here. Large international brands buy oil in bulk from multiple countries and multiple harvests, blend it for consistency, and bottle enormous volumes. That process makes it statistically almost inevitable that some batches, at some point, will slip below the top grade, especially once you factor in how long a bottle might sit in a warehouse or on a shelf before you buy it. That's a real quality consistency concern worth knowing about. It's a different claim than "this brand is deliberately selling fake oil," and good research means keeping those two claims separate. Carapelli is a well-known Italian brand, and it's been named repeatedly in European investigations into olive oil labeling, including reporting connected to a widely covered Italian prosecutor's inquiry into whether several major supermarket olive oil brands were mislabeling downgraded oil as extra virgin. That specific investigation started after a consumer magazine tested 20 bottles labeled extra virgin olive oil from major Italian supermarkets and found that lab and sensory testing downgraded almost half of them to plain virgin, a lower grade due to detectable flavor defects. That triggered a formal look by prosecutors into a dozen executives across 7 major brands sold in Italian supermarkets. Here's what's important to understand about a case like this. Getting named in an investigation is not the same as being convicted of fraud. Investigations examine evidence, and plenty of investigations conclude that a quality failure came from storage, shipping delays, or seasonal harvest conditions rather than deliberate deception. But if a brand's product has been independently downgraded from extra virgin to virgin in laboratory testing, that's a legitimate, documented reason for a shopper to pay closer attention to freshness dates and sourcing before buying it again. I'm grouping these 3 together because they show up together constantly in the same category of consumer reporting. Mainstream, budget to mid-range supermarket olive oil brands that have been flagged in blind taste tests or sensory panels for inconsistent quality. Pompeian is one of the largest olive oil bottlers in the United States, and, notably, its CEO actually chairs the board of the North American Olive Oil Association, the same trade group running the large-scale testing programs we've been referencing. Star and Mazzola are longtime supermarket shelf staples, often positioned as affordable, everyday cooking oils rather than premium finishing oils. Consumer Roundup articles and independent taste panel write-ups have repeatedly listed these brands among those that didn't consistently hold up to blind extra virgin taste testing or specific purity benchmarks in a given testing cycle. The pattern across most of this reporting is quality inconsistency and sensory defects, things like mild rancidity from age or heat exposure, rather than proven deliberate seed oil adulteration. Here's the practical takeaway. These are largely mass market, high-volume cooking oils, not artisan finishing oils, and they're often priced and marketed that way. If you're buying a budget olive oil to cook with, some quality inconsistency between batches is a realistic expectation of that price tier. But it's still worth knowing which brands have shown up repeatedly in independent testing versus which ones haven't, and adjusting your usage accordingly. Save these for high-heat cooking where subtle flavor defects matter less. And consider a different bottle for something like a raw vinaigrette, where flavor and freshness really show. This one isn't a single brand, it's an entire category. And it deserves its own chapter because it might be the biggest blind spot in your pantry. Private label olive oil, the store's own house brand, makes up a massive share of the U.S. olive oil market. One large-scale 2024-2025 industry testing initiative estimated that private label products account for close to 40% of all retail extra virgin and regular olive oil sales in the country. That's a huge amount of oil coming from a relatively small number of actual bottling suppliers behind the scenes. The problem is transparency. A national retailer's house brand olive oil doesn't come with the decades of reputation, dedicated quality control marketing, or brand-specific lawsuits that make headlines. It's often the exact same oil, from the exact same bulk supplier, simply relabeled under a store's private brand at a lower price, which can honestly be a great deal when it works out well. But it can just as easily mean you have almost no way to trace where that specific batch came from, how it was stored, or how long it sat before bottling. Independent consumer testing write-ups have specifically flagged well-known grocery chain house brands, including at least one major natural foods retailer's own private label extra virgin olive oil, for underperforming in quality testing despite the store's premium reputation. The lesson isn't store brands are automatically bad. Plenty perform just as well as name brands, sometimes better, since they're often sourced from the same California or Mediterranean co-ops as premium bottles. The lesson is that a trusted retailer's name on the shelf tells you nothing about the oil inside that specific bottle. You have to check the label details yourself, every single time, regardless of what store you're standing in. This last one isn't a single company, either it's a labeling trap that spans dozens of brands, and once you see it, you'll notice it on nearly every shelf. Here's the trick. A bottle can legally say packed in Italy or bottled in Italy, while containing olive oil grown, harvested, and pressed in Spain, Greece, Tunisia, or Morocco. Then simply shipped to Italy in bulk tankers to be filtered, blended, and poured into bottles. The oil touches Italian soil for maybe a few days before it goes on your shelf with a label design that leans hard into rolling Tuscan hills and a little Italian flag. This isn't necessarily illegal, and it isn't automatically fraud. Regulations around country of origin labeling for blended agricultural products are genuinely complicated. And multi-country sourcing is common across the entire industry, including from brands with excellent quality track records. But it is specifically the type of claim that has triggered real consumer lawsuits, including the Bertoli and Filippo Berio cases we already covered, because product of Italy imagery creates a strong impression of single-origin Italian olives, when the reality is often a blend from 3 or 4 countries on 2 or 3 continents. If Italian origin genuinely matters to you for taste, for supporting a specific region's producers, for whatever reason the only label language that actually guarantees it is a specific harvest region, a PDO or PGI certification tied to a real place, or a producer name you can trace back to an actual estate or mill. A flag graphic and the word Italian in the brand name guarantee nothing on their own. Now, I promised you balance earlier in this video, and this is where I deliver it, because leaving this part out would make this video misleading in exactly the way we've spent the last several minutes criticizing olive oil brands for. In 2025, the North American Olive Oil Association commissioned what's described as the largest olive oil testing initiative ever conducted in the United States. Over 150 leading brand samples, designed and overseen by a Yale School of Public Health biostatistics professor, tested against official International Olive Council purity standards. The results: essentially no adulteration was found across the leading brands with meaningful market share. Out of the full sample set of over 200 products tested, including smaller proprietary brands and private labels, investigators confirmed adulteration in only 1 or 2 individual products, both from very small market share brands, not any of the household names typically named in viral fake olive oil videos. That result actually lines up with the earlier, independent FDA study from 2015 we mentioned, and with Hugh Davis's own chemical purity testing from 2010, 3 separate testing efforts, spanning 15 years, all landing on the same basic conclusion. Outright secret adulteration of major brand olive oil in the US market is real, but rare, generally estimated at under 1 to 2% of products. What did show up more often in that 2025 study was a quality problem, not a purity problem. About 1 in 9 extra virgin samples failed more than one official grade quality parameter, likely tied to a genuinely difficult recent olive harvest combined with the extra time it takes oil to travel from grove to shelf to your kitchen. That's a real, worth-knowing issue. It's just a different, less dramatic issue than your olive oil is secretly sunflower oil, and it's the kind of nuance that a lot of viral content conveniently skips over because it doesn't make as good a headline. So where does that leave you? Somewhere in the middle. Outright fraud from major brands is uncommon and getting caught more often thanks to better testing and legal action. But quality inconsistency, origin labeling tricks, and plain old aging on the shelf are common, and they absolutely affect what ends up in your kitchen. Which brings us to the part of this video you can actually use. Here's your practical checklist, the stuff worth screenshotting before your next grocery run. Look for a harvest date, not just a best by date. A harvest date tells you exactly when the olives were pressed. Extra virgin olive oil is at its best within 12 to 18 months of harvest, and it starts degrading in flavor and in the health-related polyphenol compounds you're probably buying it for in the first place well before most best by dates would suggest. Look for real certifications, not just words on a label. Terms like extra virgin printed on a bottle mean nothing on their own if there's no third-party verification behind them. Look instead for marks like PDO Protected Designation of Origin or PGI Protected Geographical Indication, which tie a specific oil to a specific region and a set of verified production standards. In the US, look for a seal from an independent quality testing program that actually does off-the-shelf random testing, rather than just self-reported marketing claims. Be skeptical of rock-bottom prices. Producing genuine extra virgin olive oil at scale simply costs money, good land, careful harvesting, quick pressing, proper storage. If a bottle claiming extra virgin is priced noticeably below every other extra virgin oil on the same shelf, that price gap has to come from somewhere, and it's rarely a great sign. Buy dark glass or tin, not clear plastic. Light degrades olive oil fast. A bottle sitting in a brightly lit supermarket aisle in clear plastic has almost certainly lost some quality before you even pick it up, regardless of what brand name is on it. Taste it when you get home. Real extra virgin olive oil should have a noticeable fruitiness up front, a bit of bitterness, and a peppery bite in the back of your throat. That peppery sensation is actually a good sign, since it's linked to the same polyphenol compounds responsible for a lot of olive oil's health benefits. If your oil tastes flat, greasy, waxy, or like crayons, that's a real sensory defect, and it's a legitimate reason to return it or switch brands. consider going smaller and more traceable. Boutique, single estate, and regional co-op brands can't hide behind blended and bottled anywhere supply chains the way multinational bottlers can. They're not automatically better, and they usually cost more, but a smaller producer with a traceable estate and harvest date is inherently easier to verify than a globally blended bulk product. None of this means you need to throw out every bottle in your pantry or panic every time you walk down the oil aisle. It means shifting from trusting the label to reading the label, because in an industry where the profit margin between a real oil and a fake one can be enormous, the label is really the only conversation you get to have with the product before you buy it. So that's 6 real, documented reasons to slow down and actually read your olive oil label next time you're at the store, and hopefully a more honest, balanced picture of what's actually going on in that aisle than most videos on this topic give you. If this helped you shop a little smarter, do me a favor, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, drop a like on this video, and let me know in the comments which olive oil brand do you actually buy, and has anything in this video changed your mind about it? See you in the next one.